I'm Gabby, or MyLadySprout online. I'm a content producer here at Hi-Rez and a cosplayer. And I will be your guide on this quest. On today's journey, we'll be making Heimdallr's axe. But before we get started, let's armor up. Ta-da! All right, so what I've done is I put on a coverall. This is definitely not necessary for anyone, but you probably want to wear clothes that you can get dirty. Also, if you have long hair like me, or longish hair. I don't have long hair, but I have bangs, so I put them back. So now we're good to go. You're gonna wanna get some sort of large paper. You can technically use newspaper or even just like tape together various pieces of paper if you don't have something long like this. But I have a long roll of like a cardboardy type paper, and we're gonna draw the axe to size on here. So you're gonna want a reference image up right next to where you're gonna be drawing, because you wanna make sure you're getting all the details right. When you're thinking about the size of what you wanna make it more in terms of your body rather than the body of the actual character, because everyone is unique. You're special, you're special. So with Heimdallr, when I'm looking at his whole body while he's holding the axe, it seems that the blade of the axe is about the same size or a little bit bigger than his shin. So I'm gonna use my shin measurement as the base measurement for the entire axe. Here's my shin. Ow. Didn't stretch before this. Okay, so we got like 16 inches. I'll add a little bit more because his is slightly larger than his shin. We're gonna use this measurement as a reference to get approximate measurements of the entire axe. If you look at the size of the handle in reference to the size of the blade, I'd say that the handle is approximately 1 3/4 of the size of the blade. So that's what I'm gonna go with. And it's all right if it's not perfect, because crafting is about the fun, not about the perfection. So let's get to it. I'm just gonna go like that, so I can see that, move that to the side. And actually, I should probably do this in pen so you guys can see it a little bit easier. So here's this. Can you see that a little better? Yeah! So now that we have the basic outline of the dangerous side of the axe, I don't know the proper terms, but the ouchy side and then the holdy side, that's what I'm gonna be referencing them. It's a very scientific term. So like I said, this is about 16. So if the handle is about 1 3/4 of 16, then that is about 28. So that's what we're gonna go for. We're gonna go for 28, and we're gonna get that handle going. Now it's time to cut this out. So now that we have it like this, then we can go in and cut on the actual lines. I'm gonna cut this off right here, so these are 2 separate pieces that I can work with. This looks like a weird alien penis. Okay, now that we have all this cut out, even though it's very curly, so you can't quite tell, we will now pin this down to foam so we can mark the foam and then cut it out of foam. So you're gonna wanna get these foam mats that you can get pretty much at any hardware store. They're meant for floors of garages and things like that. And there's usually a textured side and a smooth side, and we want the smooth side. Even though technically if you wanted to use a texture side for whatever project you're using it on, you could, but we want everything very smooth. So we are going to get this, and I'm gonna take the handle first. Okay, so I don't have my sewing pins here with me, so we're gonna use safety pins. You're gonna open the safety pins, kind of stretch them out a little bit. Boop, boop. And you're gonna want to spread this out. Make sure it is in a good spot. Ooh, that is cutting it close. We calculated this exactly. It's definitely on purpose. I'm gonna take this, stick it into the foam right there. Bring this down here, stick the pin into the foam there. Okay, now that we have this, we will mark it with Sharpie. Now that we've traced our template onto the foam, we are going to get a blade and cut it out. If the blade is not in use, make sure it is put away so no one accidentally gets stabbed, you know? We don't like that. Stabbing is not ideal. All right, so we have 1/2 cut out, and we're gonna grab another one of those tiles. Stay hydrated, kids. Now that we have these two pieces, we can go ahead and move on to the axe blade part. There's that, beautiful. So mine is just a little too big to fit right here, because that would have been ideal if I could have fit it on top in the little empty space, but it's a little too big. So, a new one. Now we've got two sides of all the things. So now that we have all these pieces, we're going to grab a rod. This is just like half of a curtain rod that I got at the thrift store. I encourage everyone to get things thrifted if they can, but otherwise you could just get like a wooden dowel or a PVC pipe or something. And it fits right conveniently in the middle here. It doesn't need to go all the way through the entire thing, mainly because for me, it's just to give it a little bit of extra structure. So what I'm gonna do is, we gotta flip these. Whoopsies. I'm gonna move this half to the side out of my way. And then I'm going to see how this attaches, like so. And then I'm going to place the rod where I think it would be best. So I'm gonna mark this. Alrighty then. So now that we have that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna Dremel that out of the middle. This tool basically just spins really, really fast at the end, and you can put little pieces on that have like sandpaper on it basically. So I'm gonna take this and whoop, put it right on through there. When you're using this, ideally use it somewhere where you can get dirty, because little pieces of foam will fly everywhere. And because of that, you're gonna wanna wear some protective eye gear. And then also, preferably some sort of mask. It doesn't have to be something this heavy duty to use a Dremel. Just something that will stop you from being able to breathe in all the little particles of plastic. So let's get to it. Alrighty then. So I'm gonna place this on top of here so I can get a guesstimate of where it's gonna hit. So kind of mark the ends there. And then also kind of lift this up here. Mark where that is. Oof. Let's clean this up a little bit. So now that we have all of our pieces with, you know, the little indentations in them, we can go ahead and put them together. Nice. This one here is just a slight bit off, but I can always force the foam where I want it to be. So yeah, that's pretty dang solid. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go in with some all-purpose cement. I use Barge. It's just my, you know, brand of choice, but you can use whatever all-purpose cement you want, or you can use hot glue. The only negative to using all-purpose cement is that you do need to make sure you are using it in a very well ventilated area, and even then still wear the respirator mask because this stuff is super toxic. Don't want to breathe in too much of this. So this room particularly is not very well ventilated, so I'm gonna have to take this outside to do it. But I'll let you guys know what I'm gonna be doing. So basically what you do with all-purpose cement is you coat both sides of the foam. I'm also gonna coat this with the all-purpose cement, and you wait for it to be kind of dry, and then you put them together. So with both sides coated, they should stick together really well, and you're gonna wanna do it a little at a time. So like I said before, when this doesn't quite align, so I'm gonna wanna put it down very carefully, and when it gets to this spot, kind of very carefully place it down so it lines up the edges. And so that's what I'm gonna go do. See you on the flip side. Heimdallr fact. In lore, he doesn't actually have an axe, but we put an axe on him because he needs to be a hunter. Well then, here it is. Here is the baby. Just pushing all of the edges down as good as I can. So here it is. And it feels pretty sturdy with this bar in the middle. The next step is to take a blade and cut off all the excess so it kind of comes to a point, not totally to a point. Same thing here, kind of round out the edges to get a blade and kind of get some of these corners off. And then once you kind of get the rough shape of it, then we're gonna go in with the Dremel and we're gonna really smooth out all of those edges and really refine all of the little bits and bobs of it. So that is what's next. With something like this, you can definitely just use the Dremel tool for the entire thing to really sand it down, but taking a blade to it to get rid of some of the excess really saves you time on filing down, because otherwise you have to file a lot of it down. And this is the time where we can really go through here and define a lot of the edges. So I'm gonna grab the reference image we have, as well as a pen, so I can go through, now that we're down here, and kind of draw out where the little bottom part of the handle is. I really need to know the technical terms of all of these things. Alrighty, let me grab my Dremel tool and just start hacking. Not actually. Start filing. Sanding? Sanding. You also need to be aware of where you should really be putting in a lot of attention to detail and where you shouldn't. So, for example, in this middle section of the handle, we're going to be wrapping that in fabric, so I wasn't as particular about stuff there. And same with along these edges here, I kind of went into the foam over here a little bit, and normally I would have smoothed those out, but we're going to be putting trim on that, so I'm not too worried about it. Now we clean. All right, so now that we have a clean surface, we gotta get into putting in all the details, which is going to be a task. We're gonna pull up our reference image once again, because there's a lot that needs to be done. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna get a thinner piece of foam, trace around where the axe head part is, and then we're gonna draw the details onto the thinner foam, because then we're gonna cut them out of that and then put them on here. So let's get it. Now that I've drawn out the trim, I'm gonna grab some scissors and cut it, because this stuff's really thin, so scissors go through it very easily. All right, so now that we've got this cut out, let's test it on the axe. Here is this. Let's see, this was gonna go here. Yes. And I made these little bits a little longer because they are supposed to kind of go over this edge, so I made those a little longer. So let's pin things in place. I'm gonna start with over here, because that's one of the easier spots to start. And awesome. There we go. Now it is laying quite nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the pen and I'm going to outline where everything is, so then I can take this off and I can put all-purpose cement all along the axe, and then also put all-purpose cement on the actual trimming, and undoing that on both sides, and then we can put them together. Same deal with the all-purpose cement, put it on both sides, let it dry a little bit on both sides, then very carefully, especially with something like this, very carefully place it, and that's why you're gonna wanna make those pen marks so you know exactly where you're wanting to place it. Heimdallr fact: when we had the initial kickoff meeting for Heimdallr to figure out his kit and everything, the power was actually out in the office, so we couldn't use a PowerPoint, so they used a toy sword to motion basically everything. So here it is with all the trim. It's looking quite beautiful, if I do say so myself. I think it looks clean and nice. And the next step would be to put in the detail on the axe. We are gonna take a little bit more of a beginner-friendly approach to the details, because there is a lot of really intricate, beautiful detail on this axe that we just don't have the time to do today. If you'd like to put in the time to put in all of the amazing detail on your own axe at home, then that would be amazing. I'd love to see pictures of that. If I was to do it, then I would probably go about it the same method I used with the trim, so the details would be raised, but I'd probably put it on with hot glue instead of the contact cement, mainly because the contact cement is a little bit harder to do in smaller amounts, so I would probably opt for hot glue. The details we're going to be putting on are the ram's head, a few bands here, as well as the gem here, adding a little bit of texture to the handle, and also this little cap at the bottom. I've got a thin foam here, putting it underneath the axe about where the ram's head will be, and I'm going to trace out, like we did before, this part of the axe, just as far out as the ram's head will be. Make note where the trim kind of is on the sides here. I'm gonna draw the ram's head directly onto the foam, but the alternative is to draw it onto some paper, practice a little bit, make sure you get the shape you want, and then cut it out of the paper and use as a template to cut out of the foam. Now that we have the two halves of the ram's head cut out, we're gonna go ahead and cut out some of the other little details that we're putting on so we can all-purpose cement it all at the same time. Once again, I cannot put contact cement down in this room because this is an enclosed room. I need somewhere with ventilation to the outdoors so I can get some fresh air. So I'm gonna be doing this outside, and you probably should too. Heimdallr fact, he's actually all-seeing and all-hearing. He can hear grass grow, okay? That's crazy. Now for a major cosplay secret. Googly eyes. This isn't really a secret, but a lot of cosplayers use googly eyes for rivets on weapons and other things because they come in various sizes and they're very perfectly rounded. You can technically take out the little eyeball inside so it doesn't, you know, make that noise, but personally I like my weapon to rattle a little bit, so that's what we're gonna do. And these ones we're just gonna hot glue them on because that makes my life so much easier. Now that we've got our beautiful rattle, we get to my favorite part, which is scoring into the foam so then we can later hit it with a heat gun and then it will create deeper crevices into spots that we want there to be a little bit more texture. So I'm going to be drawing where I'm going to be making my cuts. I definitely want the spiral in the horns, the spiral in the trim, and like the eyes and stuff to really tell that it's a ram. I'm going to make the blade really small so I can get into all of those little lines in there. And just note that the deeper you cut in, the more it's going to expand. Not expand, it's going to contract. But the deeper the crevice is going to be that you're making. And now we're just going to add a very slight wood grain texture to the handle. You're just going to want to make squiggly lines basically, and I want mine to be very light so I'm not going to go in very deep. And you don't need to do the middle part because we're going to be wrapping that part. So now that I've gone and done all of the cuts that I need to do, this is where the magic happens. We're gonna get a heat gun. This is essentially an incredibly hot hair dryer. This metal part here gets very, very hot, so be very careful when you're using it. I have burned myself a couple of times using this because I am used to a hair dryer, so I like put things down and then this touches things, it touches me, and it burns things. So be aware of this little metal tip. Another thing that the heat gun does is it heat seals the foam. So everywhere that we have gone and we've made little cuts or we've sanded it down, this is really going to seal it all so whenever we put paint on it, it won't soak into the foam as much. So for the base layer, you are going to want to use something like this. This is called Plasti Dip. It's a rubber coating paint. So that is another layer that prevents any of the other paint you're going to be using to go into the foam. You want everything to sit on the surface and not get absorbed by the foam. And then once you put that layer on, then you can do whatever painting you need to do. And then once you do that, then you seal it on up with a clear coat. And then we'll be freaking finished. So let me go ahead and go outside and spray this onto here. Heimdallr fact, even though we're making his axe, he is most well associated with his horn. He actually used his horn to declare the start of Ragnarok. He's now primed and painted a little bit. I put on obviously the black primer underneath and also some brown paint over top because the handle is brown and then a lot of the base color here is brown. So I went ahead and did all of that brown, and now we go in with some detail paint, which is what I have here, as well as my brushes to do all of that. And then we also have a reference image up so we can go to town on painting. So let's do that. I mean, I think it looks pretty nice if I do say so myself. We still need to add on the little fabric part here to really hang on to it, you know? So I went ahead and cut a little strip of fabric, and I already have these little like lines on my fabric. I don't know if you guys can see that all that well, but there are lines on it. And I am going to wrap it like this and just kind of glue it down and then like make a seam on the other end. So with weathering, what you want to do is once all of it's dry, you dilute a lot of like usually black or maybe a black and brown mix of paint with a lot of water. And then you just literally get a big brush like this, dunk it in and put it all over it. And then also make sure you have like some paper towels. And so you put the diluted paint all over it, take the paper towel and then dab it. So then it gets off of the main paint, but it soaks into all of the little crevices and it really helps deepen everything a little bit. So I'm gonna do that. And then we'll put one coat of clear paint on it, just like to really seal it all up, and it'll be done. Gosh dang, this is beautiful. If I do say so myself, if I can toot my own horn, I'd say we did a pretty good job. I love the paint job. Obviously, if you're super advanced and you can put LEDs in all this because Heimdallr's acts like glows, but I feel like we did good with this like iridescent kind of paint. It looks pretty beautiful. And I hope you make something beautiful as well with this knowledge that you've learned from this show. I really, really hope you do. If you do make something, then send it my way, tag me in it, I wanna see it, and then I guess I'll just catch you guys on the next one. Let me know what you guys wanna see, what crafts you wanna see, if you want more cosplay, if you want some fun desk things, some decoration for your walls. There's a variety of things we can try to do, all either SMITE or Paladins related. We're in for an exciting future together. Once again, I'm Gabby or MyLadySprout, and I hope to see you on our next quest.